Welcome to the Murphy, Sam, and Jodi After the Show podcast.
As mentioned in Three Things to Know today, that Delta flight that flipped over on crash landing in Toronto, several investigations well underway. The marvel of it all is that
Everyone
survived it.
Yeah.
And the injuries range from minor to moderate injuries.
Yeah.
And so one of the big things that I've already been reading about, and it's fascinating, and you know that it's not my favorite thing in the world to do is fly, Murphy. But I yesterday when I first saw the images, I will never forget seeing a plane that looks like that. That's the upside down plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's always going to be a chance that video is going to exist. It looks like that video was shot from a nearby plane, maybe, where somebody was just taxiing.
Yeah.
Because it didn't look like it was from the terminal or anything like that.
So what we're hearing already so early in the investigation, which is fascinating to me, you know, when you get on a plane, all your passengers, if you fly a lot, buckle your seatbelt.
Yeah.
You know about the oxygen mask, and you know about the seat being the flotation device. But do you know what to do if you suddenly find yourself in an upside down aircraft? No.
Hopefully
it's not something you get taught. Nobody speaks to you about that.
I'm hoping they were buckled in so that you were not.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's probably more important that you're actually safe and secure, and
It's number one.
Honestly, that's the reason that
to be buckled.
And because air travel, it's still. I know there have been horrible things that have happened lately. It is still the safest form of travel. There's still 4,000 plus flights around the U.S. every single day, and but
safe that arrive safely.
If you ever wondered why, especially if you're a frequent traveler, if it feels very mundane to do those things. Yes, it is. But in that one moment that you may or may not need it, or I guess I should say when you absolutely need it, that's why you're wearing a seatbelt. If somebody had not been wearing a seatbelt with the plane flipping like that, they probably would not have survived.
No, and everybody had their seatbelt on, fastened, and not just fastened, they're saying tightly.
Yeah. Yep.
It can be the difference if you're hitting bad turbulence or whatever happens, a tight seatbelt. It can be the difference of a couple of inches of you hitting something or something hitting you or, something like that when you're in a bad situation on a plane. Yeah, but the word is that everyone was buckled in tightly and the rescue efforts happened quickly.
Oh,
okay?
I think those people look like they were getting off the plane themselves so quickly.
Flight attendants and everybody, that everything that they're trained for happened quickly. They were spraying the aircraft with this anti-flame foam right away too, because that's the number one concern of a crash landing is fire.
Yeah, jet fuel catching fire.
So there were so many things that happened right here. It's such a lesson. Like there will be more coming out soon with every single day, but I just thought it was so fascinating. They say, and this was a CRJ 900. It was also a smaller sort of plane, and the smallness of it, fewer people on the plane, that they're just designed for this. They're engineered to handle this sort of thing, this sort of impact.
Yeah. Well, the CRJ 900 is one that we have flown on a lot. In fact, it's one of the more common ones when we fly out of here that we went flying on. It's a very safe plane.
The structural elements of the plane, the wings and the tail are designed to break away in the event of a tip over. The seats are designed to withstand impacts of 16 times the force of gravity. Did you know that?
No, did not know any of that.
And to stay in place, and the seats to stay in place if it flips over.
So it sounds like the combination of preparation and engineering, and I guess a certain amount of luck too, all came together.
Yeah.
Because this, I mean, when I saw the video of it, you look and think that's. And I don't know that I've ever heard of a time, right, where anything like that has happened and every single person on the plane has survived, which is one.
Yeah, and they were getting them out. They were getting them out of there very quickly. So it's kind of like your training. It showed.
Yeah,
it showed that you knew how to act in this situation.
And if you ever sit in the exit row and they ask you if you can do it, be honest.
Think about that
because that probably saved some lives too.
Yeah. The passengers were well enough to stand and walk out of the plane. Another marvel of this situation.
An interview with one of the guys who survived, and he said once it came to a halt, he looks over at the lady next to him, and they're both hanging upside down in their seats. So they unbuckled the seatbelt and, fell down to the floor, fell down to the ceiling.
Right.
And he said that in itself was just odd.
Yeah.
Well, being in a state of being upside down is not natural. It's different and it's weird. And they say that, that's why the number one thing in an airplane as a passenger is buckle your seatbelt, fasten it, and make sure it's snug. If you shift forward quickly, it makes the difference of you hitting something. Definitely if you're flipped over. We don't spend a lot of time being in a state of upside down. It's disorienting.
Yeah.
And so you think about where you're sitting becomes where you will fall. If you're on the window, you're going to fall into the overhead cabin. If you're on the aisle, you are going to fall farther, and you're going to fall into the possibly debris too from the crash.
Yeah.
There's stuff that's flown around.
Well, because most flights are safe, it's very easy to forget that because you wind up on a pressured schedule or impatience or something like that. Mm-hmm. How many times have you heard a flight attendant, while you're taxiing to the gate, say, please keep your seatbelt secured until we get to the gate? The reason for that is the same thing. Look at what happened, in Scottsdale, whatever it was a week ago, where a plane went off the runway and hit a parked plane.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you never know, what could happen, or brakes could lock and malfunction. It's the same thing. You're not going to get out of your car until you take your seatbelt off, or you're not taking your seatbelt off, I should say, until you're stopped in your car and getting out. You shouldn't do that either in a plane.
Yeah.
But it really is, it's difficult when things don't happen. You don't think about the crisis being real. You tend to get more focused on the moment. And, hey, look.
The fear of it or whatever.
That's what I've always admired most about all safety planners. My dad, who worked at Exxon for many years, it was constant safety training that they went through because he was at a refinery. So it was everything from chemicals to heavy objects to everything. They wore hard hats and all that. And so everything was about safety and preparation and always taking the time to prepare first because you don't have time to prepare once something is underway. It's too late. And they actually used to do these little safety contests where they would randomly call the house for, right, I know.
Oh, safety contest.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
For a
this
gift
is how you
certificate.
became Mr. Safety.
Yeah, well, it may have become how I became, interested in it. But yeah, but it really was, it was a safety first thing. And so that's sort of preparation and thinking. It's like the pilots going through a checklist. The reason that they're going through an exhaustive checklist before every flight, and they may do 4 to 5, 6 flights a day, but they're doing the same things with the plane every single time through the the list of checks and making sure everything's covered.
I usually can't and don't choose to dig in and read these sort of when these things happen. Well, I just don't enjoy reading about and imagining in my head what happens. Is I start imagining what the people went through.
Yeah, it's tough to watch.
So, but this is fascinating to me because of the success rate of the survival here.
Yeah.
And honestly, the number one takeaway being that they were all buckled in and snugly. We're going to hear more and more about it. We'll get a full documentary on this one day.
Yeah.
So,
I'm curious to see what the outcome is. And it is, I think there's a whole lot of attention also right now. There's a lot more awareness from the media of these incidents that are happening, since the horrible crash in D.C. a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And, but, little incidents and near misses and those things they happen every day. Sometimes they only get reported on local news. Sometimes they don't get talked about at all.
There's been some big ones though recently, and it just feels that way.
Well, a plane flipping is a big one. You don't hear about that one, every day.
It is.
And, pilots and airports are generally in any sort of climate where there's ice and, snow every single season. They're very well prepared for that. If it's too unsafe, they're usually going to shut the airport down. But usually runways are prepped, wings are prepped, and all of those things. So I'm curious to see what happened. Is anybody speculated that it's just sliding, that they landed on a patch of ice?
I've read about there being ice. Ice is one of the biggest factors, but it's not the only factor that they're investigating. And so NTSB is involved, and I want to say remember the name.
The Canadian.
Same thing. They launched the investigation within the hour of making sure that everybody was off the plane and okay and all that.
I guess we'll know more once they get the cockpit recorder, the black boxes out.
Correct.
Missed any part of the show? Get it all on the Murphy, Sam, and Jodi podcast.